Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to I Heart Movies. Today I'm joined by Nicki of Trivial Theater and Dan of TYTD Reviews to talk about one of the most unique films I've seen in a long time, Hundreds of Beavers. Nicki first brought this to our attention last year doing a review for her YouTube channel after watching it at a film festival. I've kept my eye out for it, but at least as of yet it hasn't found its way near me. However, it's now available to stream and we all watched it last month, and afterwards I was like, we should do a podcast on this one. This film is like if Looney Tunes was a live-action black and white slapstick comedy from the silent era. A man loses everything and goes on to become the greatest fur trapper in the upper Midwest. The premise is simple, but what it does with that idea becomes bizarre, genius comedy gold. This movie is like nothing else I've ever seen, and I just had to talk about it, if for no other reason than to get more people to go out and watch Hundreds of Beavers. So, can you tell me about this movie, where it came from, and how you found out about it?
Hundreds of Beavers was a movie I saw at a film fest back last year. And just from the name, it was something that struck me as quite fun and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And just the poster, I'm a big fan of silent movies. I'm a big fan of just bombastic, weird stuff, which obviously given our history of podcasting, you can definitely tell. So Hundreds of Beavers itself is a movie that was done up by Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Green Bay, Milwaukee area. The guys that did it, Mike Chenslick, has done a couple of features previous to this. The main one being Lake Michigan Monster, which has kind of a similar premise. It's more set in like a 50s B-movie environment, but he seems to be the kind that likes to do low budget or do movie or independent cinema, but do it in a way that's kind of fun and off kilter slightly. So every idea has a lot of kind of interesting components to it that don't quite match up to modern expectations or modern stuff. So there's a lot of influence from the 50s or silent era or Looney Tunes or whatever it might be. And the sense of humor is very slapsticky and kind of just physical. And there's a lot that comes at you at one time. And this was, I can't remember what the budget was on this, but it was done over 2 winters, and I think it was 8 weeks solid or 8 weeks total of filming, plus all of the extra effects, which this one clearly has quite a bit of that. They did a lot of green screen, but to save money, they would actually do the green screen in the snow, so they would have like a big green like cloth, but then they would have their main actors in the snow. So they were outside trying to act, but also suffering in the cold. And there's times when it's obviously very chilly and he's either topless or mostly naked, and I feel bad for him.
I did not know that was like actual real snow. I thought it was all effects.
No, a lot of it was practical. Well, all the shots are composited in some way, shape, or form, or a good chunk of them are.
Yeah,
And a lot of the green screen stuff is, even though it's the background may be bombastic, it is still in the snowbank. So
that's kind of great though. That's like an extra level of commitment that you wouldn't need. Like I could see somebody trying to do something similar to this, but doing it all green screen.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I kind of like that they actually did it outside.
oh yeah.
I think as well, it's a rare example of the filmmaker choosing a format that really ultimately benefits the quality of the end production. So, had they shot this, in HD, full color, as any other production currently going out would have been made, I think it probably would have looked quite garish, and I think the CGI would have been very, very noticeable and would have looked a little bit odd. So the green screen work would have been very, because when you composite a load of photos on top of each other, you can usually on film quite easily see where the layers kind of lie.
Mhm.
And especially with newer technologies, if you've got different resolutions that you're messing with as well, it can really mess with how the picture looks. So going for that purposely silent age aged footage, I think it helps to smooth over the cracks. I mean, when I've made films myself in the past and I've shot in HD, watching the HD version of the films back when I've used sort of layering, it can make it quite angular and quite harsh and a little bit. It doesn't vibe well, for lack of a better statement. Um, which is why I usually choose lo-fi formats to present my works on whenever I've made films in the past, because I find that VHS kind of is very merciful. It smooths
Hmm.
over the layering and kind of flattens the image a little bit more, softens the edges, makes things a bit softer, and going for that sort of 20s, 30s silent era flickery footage. It doesn't completely hide the green screen work. I mean, you can clearly tell it is still green screen work, but it at least kind of smooths over the more sort of angular, rugged edges that would have probably otherwise been very, very noticeable had it been presented just as any other film of the modern day.
Agreed. One other fun thing about this is there's one point where the main character, Gene Kayak, is being chased down by the titular Hundreds of Beavers, and they only had access to 6 beaver costumes. So everything that you see, whether they're looking like pelts, whether they're looking, whether they got guys in them, however it lines up, every single one of those shots, they had to green screen every single one of those guys, however many dozens of times to get that many beavers. Because a lot of them they had different hats, they had different looks. There was a lot to them that separated them from each other in a lot of cases.
Hmm.
Mm.
I think this is one of the most perfect cases of working with your limitations, because I could see the level of effects that they were doing was not any much better than just your average YouTuber. Like the CGI and or hand-drawn animation, like 2D animation, I don't know how much there was, but there was some of everything. But it wasn't studio quality, but they made it work with this production and made it seem so purposeful that it was perfect. It was just great.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, they really get that out the gate, which was smart. It starts with Gene Kayak is, having drinks with his buddy or with all of his, I'm guessing, either his buddies or his clients or whatever. And it starts off with all of his clients are hand drawn. And then he's obviously live action and he's interacting with all this stuff. And then throughout the rest of the movie, you do get more of those kind of moments of not quite real effects.
And I think as well, one of the things that really does work in this film's favor is it simultaneously doesn't overcomplicate things. The actual story here is remarkably simple. It's basically
Yes.
a guy becomes a fur trapper in order to win a sweetheart's heart. Um, but it's the minutiae of that basic story that then suddenly rockets off in every possible direction. I mean, essentially, it feels like an elongated Wile E. Coyote
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
routine, but I think the thing that I really liked about this film is that it sets the boundaries of where things are going to go, and then it just goes absolutely nuts within the parameters of those boundaries. Like it
Yeah.
sets the key framework and it says, right, these are the limits of where we're going to go to, and then just uses every single tool that it's got to hand within those parameters slightly beyond its comfort zone. Like, there's a couple of the moments where he's trapping beavers that actually go a little bit dark compared to
Yeah.
like you have the lots of very comedy moments where it's just bonk on their head, they fall over, and then like I think there's one where they like full on is it drown a beaver or something, and it's just
Oh, yeah.
like
There's
They get
that.
drowned, they get skewered. There's rabbits that get eaten alive by raccoons,
mm,
There's the one where the one gets shredded.
but they're all giant mascot costumes, so it's not like disturbing. It's just weird and hilarious.
mm.
Well, in that respect, it does kind of, you describe it as a live action Wile E. Coyote. I mean, it is that, Wiley gets exploded, he gets, drowned, or buried by rocks. All of those things, there are variations of those things that happen here.
But I also love how their eyes turn to X's as soon as they die.
I was just going to say, another thing as well is I like where if they want to express surprise or curiosity, they'll put like a little animated cartoon question mark or exclamation mark above their head,
Mhm.
which is just a nice touch. I thought it really gives them a lot of character, given that they are literally like mascot suits.
Mhm.
So
They did a
yeah,
lot with that, trying to express things without talking, because there's almost no dialogue in the movie. Like you can hear a word here and there sometimes, but like when he's shopping, it's like a video game choose your weapon screen. trying to pick which thing he's going to buy. I thought that was so clever.
Very
Oh, yeah,
much so.
absolutely. And there's some actual direct references to video games within the film. So for as you mentioned, the shop scene is literally a lift from Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. They even have very, very similar music for the when he goes to the shop front.
I thought it
Um
seemed Zelda-ish.
yeah, yeah. When the animals have the exclamation point question mark stuff, that's Metal Gear Solid. It's when people notice you in the game, they get like an exclamation point, which then shows you got to go hide somewhere. Mario Brothers gets references at least once or twice in there. So there was another one as well. I
I was
think
gonna say the map where he's like walking around, like when he's trying to like near the end where he goes to all of his major kind of spaces. He's got the little character that kind of bops a bit. Is that the Mario reference you're speaking of?
yeah, that would be one of them. But yeah, there's loads of just like nice little pop culture references. But I think the thing that I like the most about the fact that they do those pop culture references is they're not strictly overt. Like with films of this caliber, budget, scope, a lot of filmmakers would really go up to the line on it, like basically bordering on copyright, like lawsuit territory. But they take those elements and make them noticeable enough that if you know, you can kind of go, oh yeah, and put two and two together. But if you were just like a casual audience goer, you wouldn't be sitting there going, "Oh, that's Mario," or "Oh, that's Zelda," or whatever. You'd
Hmm.
just go, "Oh, that's kind of quaint. It's nice." I like the fact that they don't overtly lean into the pop culture references. They kind of almost reimagine those references so people who have those threads can piece it together if they want, but it's not so in your face that everybody is kind of, you know, going, oh, that's a video game reference, or oh, that's because that's one of the big issues I always have with a lot of films is they drop a lot of pop culture references in, and then you spend the rest of the movie going, well, why aren't I playing Zelda? Why aren't I watching this film? Why aren't I, watching this TV show? And I think they do a really good job of kind of subtly dropping those in without being too in your face about the sources of them.
Yeah, because I didn't interpret them as references. Like the shopping scenes reminded me of Zelda, but I didn't think of them as a Zelda reference. It was just like an inspiration.
Mm. No, absolutely. Also, can we say that this is can we take a moment to appreciate the fact that this film probably has the longest intro title in history? Like the intro slide starts at what, 45 minutes into this hour and 45-minute film.
Well, the opening credits are half an hour, but the actual Hundreds of Beavers thing, I think it comes in at like an hour 15.
I feel like there was another movie that I saw that bizarrely had the title in the middle of the film, but I cannot think of what it was right now. But yes, it was one of the longest one I've ever seen.
Well, someone brought up Cannibal Holocaust, or not. Someone brought up Cannibal the musical as like heavily, and I've not seen it, but brought it up as heavily referenced in this, and even in their marketing materials, they do talk about this being like a crossroads of like Looney Tunes, Benny Hill, Cannibal the musical. I can't think what else, but that whole kind of mixture of stuff.
Mm. I remember when you first saw this film, Trev, you messaged me to say that you'd had a really good time with it. And when you managed to get your hands on a copy of it, one of the first things you said to me is, be prepared because this is an incredibly Midwest film.
Oh, it is.
And I'm
Was I
still
wrong?
learning the ways of the I'm still learning the ways of the Midwest. But if that's what goes on in your guys' neck of the woods, I'm simultaneously intrigued and terrified.
Well,
That's a good way to look at living in the Midwest.
when I was a little kid, my dad would take us out to trap gophers that we would take to the courthouse for a bounty. So it's not 100% off. It's weirdly similar. Like I didn't really even think of it at the time, but we that was the thing that used to happen. I don't know that people still do that, but well, no, they do. Actually, they do. Just a couple months ago, they were talking about because I filmed the local government stuff, and they were talking about increasing beaver bounties because there was a problem with beavers in the county. So they were trying to kill more beavers.
Oh no.
So I guess this is very Midwest.
You're Johnny
Great, now I've
literally
just got the
has
image.
hundreds of beavers.
I guess so. I can't believe I didn't even make that connection until just now.
Now I've just got the image of you and Triv wandering around in the outback in giant beaver and raccoon hats. All
That
with
was a
charming comedy-sized pipes.
that is one thing, and yeah, the Midwest side of things, I think it's more just the feel of it, like it has just that, I don't know, it's like a warm blanket to me. You just kind of have that sense of it, even if it's probably more based like North Woods, Wisconsin than it would be
Yeah.
where I'm at personally. But I think it does still invoke a lot of that stuff and the way that things work and whatnot. But I just got thinking about like the layers that they go into. You've got like his girlfriend, she's ripping apart this beaver pelt and taking out all these bits. She gives him the heart
Like
of the
plush organs.
yeah, oh yeah, exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And like there's actually like a human skeleton inside. And it's like
The
the most
implications of
ridiculous.
that are disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of works, but at one point she gives the beaver heart to Jean or to Jean, and he opens up the heart and there's like all of these like maggots living inside the heart. Like there's layers upon layers upon layers of jokes and kind of weird little stuff, and it's so rewatchable because you every time you watch it you see something new. I've seen this 4 times now, and every single time you see other bits and stuff in the background and the way that they achieve certain effects, and it's such a rewatchable film.
Hmm.
Agreed. And this is the thing. I mean, I saw it for the first time last weekend. And as soon as the credits ran, the first thing that was on my mind is, God, I wish that they'd actually get a physical release of this out as soon as possible.
I would totally
Um,
buy one.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I joked with my friends who we watched this with last weekend that if they did do like a special edition release for it, they should do it like bound in like the most kind of rugged fur and just have it like be the raccoon's face in like a slipcase. Because I was having flashbacks to the Ed Wood VHS Angora box set, which when it came out was just like draped in fluffy Angora all the way around. At the time, it was absolutely lovely, but like 20 years after the fact, it's absolutely hideous because it's just attracted so much dust and dirt from everywhere. But yeah, I want a furry beaver slipcase for my Hundreds of Beavers set, please.
I know they are talking a physical release according to their website. I think it's probably something where since they're still doing live screenings, because that's one thing about this movie. A lot of like these film fest movies, they kind of do their thing and then they kind of fade. Not fade, that's not the right word, but they'll either find distribution, go on, be in theaters, go streaming, that's it. These guys did something unique. They're I would call it guerrilla marketing across the board. From the
Hmm.
moment that they got, even during the film fest circuit, they were going to and doing live showings in theaters all over the place. To this day, if you can get 15 people to sign up for a showing at any theater basically in the US, they will go there as long as you can promise 15 people, which is incredible because that just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. And every single place that they went, on Twitter at least, they had a different poster representing their run in that city. And a lot of times it was a 1 or 2 night deal.
Hmm.
So you'd have like they just did oh gosh, where was it? I think it was coming up in Chicago. They did Rocky Horror, like a Rocky Horror inspired cover. So you got like the lips, and then you've got like one of the beavers like laying across it. They did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. They did Rain Man. They did all of these different covers, and they kept themselves out there. They made their own success. They got the attention of people by being out there and building word of mouth and building all of these things. Social media presence, a whole 9 yards.
Hmm.
I'm not well versed a lot with film fest movies generally or the way that they work, but this seems like they knew what they were doing. They went in and they knew what they had on their hands and they wanted to make sure people saw it.
It also helps that it's really good.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Thinking about it as well, and I know that this has been the case previously with older films. One of the things that I was thinking while watching it was that I really, really hope that the filmmakers, on top of exporting the final version of the film that we all saw, also exported a version that stripped all the music out but kept the sound effects in.
Hmm.
Because one of the big things that they do a lot with older screenings from the 20s and 30s, if it had a musical score attached to it, is they'll get an orchestra in to perform it live.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just having visions like 10, 15 years from now, if the film does go on to greater things, of like having live orchestra screenings of Hundreds of Beavers where like all of the audio sound effects are still in place, but like the music for the whole piece is just performed live.
That would be cool. And the music to this is, and I know you talked about this in your review, Dan, like your letterbox review, but the music is a really interesting combination of established stuff and just like random bits, but it works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a very effective. I mean, overall, I mean, I kind of feel bad because usually one of the things I love when I talk about cinema is being able to kind of critique it, to be able to say, well, this was good and this was good. Didn't like this very much. I really didn't have a lot to dislike about this film. Like Triv said, I think the best way to describe it is it's very much a comfort watch. You just sort of put it on and you can relax into it really, really easily. It's not something where you have to be 100% focused on it for the entire runtime to get it. Um, it's madcap. It reminded me a little bit of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World in terms of there's a lot going on, but it's not so intense that you have to give it your 100% dedicated focus to understand how it's working. Um, the soundtrack is really, really nice, good and solid. The composition is fine. I mean, the people who I watched it with, there was a critique that it was maybe a little bit too long. It maybe overstayed its welcome a little bit in the third act. But I mean, I'll be honest, if I'm entertained by it,
Hmm.
and it's still giving me a good thing, whether it's a little overlong or not, if it's still entertaining me, it's doing the job. Could it have been shorter? Maybe, but if I'm still enjoying it, why would I want it to be?
It was longer than I expected, but it kept doing things that, like, it was not the same thing over and over again. Like, he's trapping beavers for the whole movie, but they kept changing things and adding things, and it kept getting weirder. So I never felt like, even though it was longer than I thought it was going to be, I never felt like it was too long.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, that was another thing I quite enjoyed about it is, especially the first half of the film. So for the first decent chunk of the runtime, it's the fur trapper trying to just make ends meet. Like he basically wakes up with nothing, and he's got to try and get something in order to start building, his fur trapper kit. And one of the things I really love is that for a good chunk of that opening of the film, it's just him trying the same trap over and over and over again, but with slight variation just to see if something changes.
Hmm.
And every time he tries something slightly different, the rabbits or the beavers or the raccoons who are going towards the trap will just immediately sidestep him, and then he'll end up like in a prickly bush or falling out of a tree or being chased by wolves or something.
Or a
Um,
woodpecker.
Yeah.
yeah, which is nice. I'm a big fan of repetitive humor if it's done well. Just doing the same kind of gag over and over with slight
Uh-huh.
variation, I
Yes.
think can be absolutely hilarious if it's done well, and it's done very, very well in this film.
The woodpecker joke especially, it was like the same one over and over again, and it kept getting funnier. And at some point, I was like, okay, they might be doing this one to death. But then they kind of twisted the joke a little bit, and kept doing different things with it, and then it was hilarious again.
Well, the thing is, he learned from his, like, it was a process of learning as he went, he knows when he whistles, the woodpecker is going to come and peck his face. And he learns from that and incorporates it into his way of doing traps. And like the prickly bush bit, he learned, he tried it with this and tried it with that. Like there was the ingenuity that it took to kind of keep going and keep trying. And he kind of succeeded where Wile E. Coyote failed. Because that whole repetitive thing was a lot of, like you say, it's a lot of Wile E. Coyote.
That is true. It was like if Wile E. Coyote would learn some lessons from his failures.
Oh yeah.
And as well, I mean, this thing has got Buster Keaton's fingerprints like all over it. In terms
Oh
of the
yeah.
the pratfalls, I mean, I feel sorry for the actor, but he really committed to throwing
Oh
himself
yeah.
around for this thing. And some of the stunt work is actually really quite impressive. Like, I have a real soft spot for Chaplin and Keaton, and some
Oh
of the
yeah.
stooge. I love stoogery. The Three Stooges are my bread and butter, and to be able to see that kind of cinema resurrected. and not be aggressively in your face about it as well. That's the thing I think that a lot of modern slapsticky comedies get wrong, is it's very much more aimed at sort of like audiences who watch Jackass or things like that, where it's less about the stoogery and more about just somebody getting comedically hurt.
Yeah.
Um, this is a lot more calm about its slapstick. Um, and I think that that works better as a more of a slow boil picture.
I would also add, and forgive me, I'm in a tangent just a tiny bit. You look at like 20s movies and it's like showing an ankle would be, the kind of, oh my goodness, going crazy. At one point you see Jack or sorry, Gene with his lady. They're sitting there and all of a sudden she shows him ankle and then all of a sudden he's going like, and then all of a sudden she's pole dancing. So, it takes it
Yeah,
from that 20s perspective, brings it into the 2000s, and she's like teasing him to get her dad's attention, and then, he ends up suffering for it. But that's very much kind of a thing that was done with 20s comedy, but then you're pulling it into the 2020s and then back to the 1920s.
absolutely. And that's an aspect that I can really appreciate. I mean, I'm going to use the word recycling, but I don't mean that in a term of degradation. I mean it as an affectionate term. I like the fact that they've taken these what have previously been viewed as worn ideas from 20s and 30s cinema and almost upcycled, refreshed, and recycled them with modern sensibilities.
Yeah.
Um, it really just it shows that the fundamental ideas behind those older films aren't broken, that they do
Hmm.
still appeal and they can still attract an audience. Um, and I really love the way and that's I suppose that's another aspect as well. You got my thoughts rushing now, guys. Seriously, you're doing a good job today. I love that. I love the fact that it doesn't talk down to the audience. The film itself isn't trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator. It's presenting what it wants to present. It assumes that the audience has some knowledge of cinema, some knowledge of film to be able to appreciate the gags that it's going through.
Hmm.
It's not trying to play to the stupidest person in the room. It's just trying to do what it wants to do on its own terms and
Yeah.
deliver that kind of end product how it wants it to be. I don't feel like this film would have been 10% as good as it is had it had to go through the studio system to get to us.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
probably not. No.
Well, I guarantee you this, had it gone through the studio system, you wouldn't have had moments where there's a solid, say, 3 to 4 minutes where he's sitting there trying to fish and he's got a snowman next to him that keeps like changing positions, a little snow dog that keeps changing positions. Like that bit, when I watched it initially, I was so impressed by like the interactions between the snowman and Gene. It just worked. It's
Mm,
essentially a one-man show for the first probably 20 minutes roughly once you get past that opening bit.
absolutely. And it's small things like one of the things I praised, and I praised this in my letterbox review, and I'm going to say it here, is one of the things that I think really, really took this film to the next level is I don't know who edited this film, but they had a incredible understanding of comic timing and
Hmm.
silent film editing styles.
Yeah.
They held the shots exactly as long as they needed to be the funniest they could possibly be. They held reaction shots as long as they needed to be funny. They curated each scene cut perfect to me. I don't think there was a single joke where I thought, oh, I would have edited that a bit shorter or a bit longer. Every single cut was just as funny as it could possibly be before they moved on. Like there's a scene where he sets up a snowman with a fishing rod and it's on like a trap where the arms kind of move gently whenever a fish takes it. It sort of tips the arm so it looks like it's waving. And they hold those shots just long enough that at first you're wondering what it is, and then as the arm very slowly starts tipping, you I can't explain exactly what makes it funny, but I was in stitches watching these like 3 or 4 snowmen gently just start waving as fish were taking it, and like the fur trapper would walk back waving at them as they were waving at him. Um, but yeah, fantastic edit, really, really solid editor on board. So, Mr. Editing guy or gal, whoever you are, you did a fantastic job with this movie.
Oh yeah. Well, and even with bits like that, and again, that progression of, he kind of learned as he went, and you kind of learn with him like what works and what doesn't. He starts off with the basic snowman, the thing falls out, and then he bulks up the snowman with these like giant, bodybuilder arms, and the thing does the exact same thing. And then he goes with the thing that works, and it's just that's awesome. Also, like the little details of it gave me kind of the Wii console. There's like paper fishing. Like there's I can't think of what the game was, but it was like 4 or 5 different games. They had like the fish were made of paper. The cat like there was cow racing. The things were made of something else. But it gave me that vibe because all the fish were like corduroy. The birds were done something different. The frog that's in it was done in a different way. They used all of these different mediums to kind of pull across all of these different animals that weren't in like mascot costumes. And again, that attention to detail to really show off that part was really neat.
This was like mixed media, but film version, because you had all these little animals are puppets,
Yeah.
but you also had some CGI, you had some 2D animation, you had the live action stuff, you had some sets, some green screen. It was just like they took little bits of everything and cobbled it all together into one big mixed media production that was hilariously perfect.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And in the wrong hands, it could have gone south really quickly. I mean, even like Dan said about the editing, the wrong person behind all of that incredible footage, could have screwed it up something fierce.
Yeah. Yeah, a good editor
Absolutely.
can really make something work
Yeah.
really well, and this was perfect.
Absolutely. I mean, I suppose another aspect as well is the sincerity of the production. I mean, one of the big things that stuck in my mind whilst I was watching this through is that this film really visually reminded me of Forbidden Zone, which is a wild. It's almost like a punk take on Fleischer cartoons and 20s and 30s cinema. But it's very, very snarky and very, very edgy in terms of how it portrays itself. And that kind of thing, it's quite easy nowadays to make films that are just very snarky and edgy, ever since like the Marvel Revolution, where kind of having a bit of snark was basically the cool thing to do in cinema. I think that a lot of films find it to be a bit easier to just have some wisecracking, charismatic person at the front of the film, and that's it. So it was really nice for me to see them take that sort of template that Forbidden Zone had, but really row back and really restrain themselves on not going full on sarcastic, snarky strangeness. They went for sincere strangeness, which I don't think gets anywhere near as much of an airing as it should do. I, for one, am in favor of sincere strangeness.
Oh, 100%.
No, yeah, I loved everything about that. It one of my favorite, probably sincere strangeness, and one of my favorite gags was the investigator beavers, who were basically Sherlock Holmes and Watson. Because like up until that point of the movie, like it had been a weird movie. Like there's nothing normal about this movie. But I feel like that was the point where the movie really changed into something super weird. But I absolutely loved it. I just about died laughing when these two investigator beavers showed up to solve the mystery of who's murdering all the beavers.
And the things that they find and assume when they're in the trial, which in itself is its own just weird, crazy moment. You've got the Southern lawyer who's like talking in essentially gibberish, but with a Southern accent. And then the poor like public defender who's like, I mean, they honestly sound kind of like minions, really.
That's what I thought.
But across the board, you get like you get the Sherlock and Watson beavers. You've got like the Catholic priest beaver. You've got the cop beavers. You've got the judge beaver. That they expand out beyond just generic beaver, which is pretty great too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite sequences in the film is where they tie him down to a table and they've got a buzz saw and they're gonna chop him up. And he sits there and really, really thinks. And they do this wonderful thing where they have like semi-transparent overlays of like loads of thoughts of things being untied or undone or moved around, and you can see like it's supposed to be a metaphor for him thinking about how he's going to get out of the situation. Then they show like a Chinese finger trap where he push the fingers together and it lets you sort of pull away. Um, and they do this great bit of editing where he basically just pushes his hands up and he's suddenly completely untied. And the people just sort of look at him like, "What? That's not how it works."
In that same scene, there's because like to be able to infiltrate this beaver headquarters, there's a beaver that ends up getting or dead, and so Gene puts on his fur and goes in. When they're in this room where he's about to be buzzsawed to death, this hunt or this trapper that he learned from shows up, and all of a sudden there's a zipper down the middle of his face. And does a zipper, and there's a beaver inside. It's such a you don't expect it when he first shows up, and then it's like, oh dear.
But I also love that they added a new title card to that scene too, saying the actor and then playing the beaver.
The one thing, it's a small part, but I remember the first time I saw it, I think I was the only one in the theater that laughed at it, but you've got all these relatively well put together costumes for the beavers, for the rabbits, for the raccoons, the wolves, all those, and the dogs. But you get to there's a Native American and he's got this horse.
Oh, that
it's
thing.
just it's literally two people in a horse costume, and the back half of the horse costume isn't even like a full horse costume. It's like a sheet.
And one of their faces is showing out the front. And the scene where he tries to ride it.
You see, though, that this is the thing that I can't stress it enough. It's those scenes like that for me really drive home the fact that these were filmmakers who not only knew what they were doing, but were confident about what they were doing. Like I mean, I don't want to like talk down to people who are just going out and making movies. You know, anybody can do what they want, but there's a certain level of confidence that comes with somebody who knows their story in and out, knows their shot list in and out, knows their storyboards in and out, knows the entire sort of raison d'etre, for lack of a better word, of what their film stands for, where you can do things that look a little ramshackled and it's okay because it's in line with the tone and style of the film. I think in lesser hands, doing a scene like that, you wouldn't get the vibe of, you know, this is somebody who's confident with their work just taking the proverbial. It would be more a case of you sort of looking at going, oh well, they clearly couldn't afford a horse costume. So again, it's a real kudos to the filmmakers that, you know, they are so confident and clear in their intentions with this work that they felt comfortable being able to throw a couple of slightly more ramshackledy bits in, but it still being effective because we as the audience know that these people know what they're talking about. I think that that's a certain level with filmmaking, is the relationship between the audience and the filmmaker. The filmmaker has to kind of convince the audience that what they're watching has been considered, has been, you know, meticulously planned out. And I think once the audience get on board with the idea that they're dealing with a professional rather than just somebody in their basement with a camera and $20 to spend, I think that you can then start becoming a little bit more confident and a little bit more cavalier with your kind of attitude towards what you show and what you don't show. Because, like I say, like we've said throughout this discussion, in lesser hands, that scene could have been taken very, very differently. But I think that because we have established by this point that the filmmakers making this clearly know what they're doing, it does turn it into a kind of, oh, okay, they're joking with us at this point. Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. I'm on board with this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And looking at Cheslick's previous works, which includes the guy that I'm trying to think of the guy's name, Ryland Hughes, yeah. the guy that played the main character, in Fur Trapper, they worked together in the movie previous to this, which is called Lake Michigan Monster, and it's not the movie this is by any stretch, but it's still an incredibly fun watch. I would suggest it just because you see a lot of what this movie is, its DNA you can trace to that. And it almost feels like a practice run for what this is and what works about this movie. But you see a lot of you see the cutting of teeth to be able to do what they do so well in this one.
Hmm.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, having seen this film, it's very much set me up in the mind space of I'm very interested to see what they do next.
Oh,
Yes.
true. Very much.
Because I mean, they don't even have to necessarily stick to this style or this genre. The way that they've executed this film and what you've told me about Lake Michigan Monster, I feel confident that whatever they turn their hat to next time will probably be something that I'm quite interested in.
Oh yeah. And they seem to have a specific, and again, I think Cheslick has only done, I think he did a short and then he did Lake Michigan Monster in this one. So at least as far as like IMDb credits, those are the things that he's done. He's probably done a lot more on the side, but established stuff there, those were the three things. But yeah, I think he seems to have a specific style, and I think that's clear. I don't think you go this specialized and this weird without having a love of those pieces.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Part of me kind of wants them to do another silent film, but also I would want to see what they would do with other genres too.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, I think you'd enjoy going in with the understanding that it's a good movie, and I don't mean to downplay it because it is quite fun. It's not quite what this is, but again, it is well worth a watch just to see what was done previously, because that's really kind of 50s monster movie where you have that very upright and very, strong-jawed main character, and then you get, his group of interesting, people and the love interest and the whole nine yards. It gets interesting very quickly. But you could, Dan, what was the movie of the grasshoppers that took over Chicago? They did it on MST3K. I can't remember what it is, but they use like that or like them or movies of like creature features of that nature from the 50s. You really get that sense with like Michigan Monster.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, we'll have to try and get it booked in for one of our many watch-alongs we've found ourselves into recently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 for me. It's a difficult situation when it comes to whether I would want to see them do more within the silent film genre, because on the one hand, this film was a really, really good example of making that style of filmmaking work. The difficulty was this a lightning in a bottle moment?
That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah,
Because I
and
would love to see another one, but would it just be doing the same thing again?
is the thing. And I sit there and I think, would I want them to go through all of that sort of thing again to produce something that comes out? And my immediate reaction is, oh, well, it's not as good as Hundreds of Beavers, or, because one of the risks of being a filmmaker when you specialize in a specific kind of style and genre of filmmaking is you do often get pigeonholed into that. And you can very quickly find yourself just churning out the same kind of thing over and over again. And it seems like these guys are thriving in whatever environment they're currently working in. So I don't know. I mean, I personally, I think I wouldn't say no to them going back to the silent film genre ever, but I would like to see them maybe explore other things before that point. So maybe do a couple more films, in different styles. If they want to kind of keep that kind of 20s to 60s vibe like they've done with Lake Michigan Monster or with Hundreds of Beavers. But I think I'd like to see them experiment a little bit more with something different and then maybe revisit the silent film stuff after they've kind of, worked within their different various boundaries. But yeah.
Well, I think with this too, you can clearly see they threw everything at this. And I don't mean like, they're worn out or whatever, but there's so much that's in this. It's not a surface level. They dug down deep to mine everything that they could for this. I don't think that, there's many kinds of silent movies and you could certainly go in a different direction. But I think the reason that they did something 50s, B-movie inspired and then went to like a 20s, backwoods feature, I think that is to try and keep it unique and interesting.
Yeah, they're working backwards through the years. The next film will only be viewable through a What the Butler Saw machine. So you have to go to the local pier and put 20 cents and then crank the handle to see it go at 12 frames a second. But I tell you what, it'll be one of the best films of the year.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too. I've been an advocate for this since I saw it, just because there's a lot of movies out there that they struck me and they're very good and well put together. But this one was just so outside the box in every level. I don't I and that's I think that the term gets thrown around a lot, but it's, for me at least, was one of the best things I've ever watched because it was so unique and it hit all the things that I love so much.
Well, I'm glad you advocated for it because I would never have heard of this otherwise. This isn't something I don't think that would have ever crossed my radar because it's such a small independent film.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm
Mm,
I'm glad you made the video you did because that was what first made me want to see this.
I appreciate that.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I, had you not come to me and said that you want to catch this is something a little bit different, I think I would have seen the poster for it and kind of been a bit put off because it looks a little bit like it's just going to be a screwball comedy kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Um, but having actually watched it, I really, really enjoyed it. I think I could confidently say that it's one of the best films of this decade so far, at least in my opinion. I really, really enjoyed it. I find it a little bit a little bit depressing that one of my favorite films this decade so far is a black and white throwback film to the 1920s.
Well, it goes to show you that the best things, and I mean, you mentioned this before, the best things don't change. What makes a good movie, and funny, just, it kind of goes through trends and cycles and all that stuff. But the slapstick, when it's employed correctly, or I
Yeah,
shouldn't say correctly, when it's employed well,
yes.
you can have a brilliant piece of cinema. And you can laugh at it and still go, that was unexpected and what the hell was going on? But because that was one of the things that was over and over in the chat as we were watching this was, I don't know what's going on, but it's hilarious. That was kind of the return sentiment because honestly, like Dan said, the story of this thing, the story is relatively simple. There's not a lot to it.
Yeah.
But it just goes how it gets from point A to B and somehow to Z. It's such an interesting ride. You want to see what's going to happen, even if you know kind of where it's going. You have no idea where it's going.
Yeah, exactly. I would have never guessed we got to the end that we got when we started the movie.
Oh, the last 20 minutes is just what the and it's weird because right before that, and like Dan said in the chat, we kind of had a couple of folks with good reason. It did kind of drag a little bit because you're kind of coming to the point where it's working its way to the climax, but it probably took maybe a bit long to get there. But then all of a sudden you hit this point, and it's like when Wile E. Coyote like takes out the linchpin and everything goes into wild action. The rock gets, tossed off of the slingshot. Everything just goes into fast motion. And there's so much that goes on.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the things that I really, really hope when this gets a physical release is that first of all, I want it 4K. I really want to be able to see in as much detail as possible every single facet of this production because I think that, like you rightly said at the start of this video, every time you rewatch it, you're going to see something new. There's going to be something running around in the background or just something off into the corner. I think having this in the highest possible resolution so you can see every single gag is going to be really, really integral to this production. But I would also love if they do get one of these released that one of the boutique labels picks it up because if they get their hands on it, they're more than likely to do a really decent extras package. Because I would
Mm,
be absolutely fascinated to see the behind the scenes on this thing to get an idea of how they edited the thing, how they shot it, the kind of production diary for it, if there were any deleted scenes. I can't imagine there were any deleted scenes given that it's an hour and 45 minutes long, but if there are, I want to see them. Um, trailers. One of the things that I love, and I hope they do show this, is some some of these films when they come out on Blu-ray, they'll do like a featurette on the premiere of the film, where they'll go to sort of screenings and just film audience reaction. And given that I live internationally, I'm very, very unlikely to ever see this in a theater, unfortunately. But I would love to be in a room with an appreciative audience watching this, just to see
Hmm.
how they react, especially if there's a couple of like first timers mixed in there, because I imagine just the utter bewilderment in the room as this played out must have been spellbinding, to say the least.
Oh yeah. Well, I can tell you on their website at least there are a couple of videos of like at least some of the interviews and stuff at the live showings. One of the things that they did for a while was, and it's one of those little moments that kind of repeats through the movie. Someone will get tackled by somebody else and there's no music. It's just you hear like and then people go down and it's just it's the most random thing. It's like you did all the stealthy stuff and then you just go tackle the guy. But there's a few videos of that, which is pretty great. There's there's moments like that. Yeah, I think you can find some of them on their website, but obviously for the whole kit and caboodle featurette, yeah, I would hope that they would do that too. And I think because of the stuff that they've brought out, because of audience requests, the fact that they'll do showings for a relatively small group of people if there's enough interest in it. I think they're cognizant of who their audience is, what they're looking for, and all that kind of stuff too. So, like I say, they've talked about a physical release. I would imagine there would be one coming out, and I think a lot of that will be addressed accordingly. Really.
Absolutely. I suppose the only other question to really ask you guys would be thousands of beavers? Question mark. How would you feel about a sequel?
I mean, they could if they wanted. The movie got crazy enough that they could have like thousands of alien beavers invade Earth.
Well, they were trying to go to outer space there. I mean, they kind of did what it took Jason like 10 movies to do and Hellraiser 4 movies to do, to go to outer space. They were attempting it in the first one. For myself, I love, like I said, I mean, I think I've made it clear how much I enjoyed this movie. I think you leave well enough alone. It's like Tucker and Dale versus Evil. They've tried to put out a sequel, but the hype and all, like amongst the people that know about it, it's well respected, it's loved. They understand that you don't do a sequel unless you have a good solid base for it. And
Hmm.
I don't know
Hmm.
where you would go from here with that, just because there's so much in this one.
Oh yeah.
This feels like a perfect one and done story.
Yeah.
Like, if they had a good story, I would totally take a sequel. But if they
Oh, agreed.
would be just making it to make it, I wouldn't want that because this is so perfect on its own.
I would agree.
Oh yeah. No, agreed. Agreed.
Now, if you're questioning if there are actually possibly thousands of beavers in this movie, then you know what? There is. It
There
is quite
actually could be
possible.
thousands of beavers in this
There
movie.
could. Well,
A
it's
couple
like
of
the
those
rabbit.
scenes.
It's like the when he's tracking the rabbits and there's 2 footsteps and then you see marriage and then you see many
That was
positions.
such a hilariously weird joke.
Oh man, how that scene ends is actually one of the darkest moments of the entire movie. I'm disappointed there was only 2 little ones though. There should have been like, because the rabbit gag about multiple babies and stuff, and but yeah, anyway.
Well, that's probably a good place to stop. We ended up talking about it more than I thought we would, but I just wanted people to know about this movie.
Oh
So
yeah.
if you are listening to this and you have not seen or even heard of this, find out how you can watch it. It's available on Amazon, I think, for rent.
Yeah. It's available for rent on
Mm.
Amazon and then Apple TV, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are the only 2 places right now. If you go to their website, which is just I think it's hundradsofbeavers.com. If you're looking for showtimes, depending upon when you watch this, they do, if you can put in your zip code and see if there's anything close by, and they do a pretty decent an area covers. So definitely if you can see it live, great. And I think I mean, for the foreseeable future, they seem to keep doing live showings or, at least showings of the movie itself. So well worth looking at that as well. So
Okay, well, I think that will be all for this episode. We will be back for more in the future. But until then, do you guys want to let people know where they can find you if they want more from you? Dan?
Yeah, certainly. So thank you again for having me on, by the way, Jonathan. Always appreciated. You can find me on YouTube at TYTD Reviews. No, wait, let me redo that. Sorry. You can find me on YouTube. It said tytdreviews.com. I'm like, that's not my YouTube channel name. That's my website. You can find me on YouTube at TYTD Reviews. I upload videos every week, generally covering cult and forgotten cinema. I've got a new review probably coming out in the next week or so, but we are about to go on our summer break. But we will be back in the fall with a fantastic review of the film New York Ninja. So yeah, check us out. We're also on Letterboxd under TYTD Reviews and X. So check us out.
good stuff. And you can find me here on YouTube. I'm Trivial Theater. I do a wide array of random, obscure, and straight up bad movies. I upload relatively frequently. So yeah, stop by, say hi. That's probably the best place to find me. And yeah, bring a popcorn, get yourself a seat.
Okay, well, thanks for introducing me to this movie.
You're welcome.
We will see you again soon. Thanks for listening to I Heart Movies. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My Linktree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.